Howdy, 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 my name is Anachi Sasuke. Welcome back to Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. There's gotta be a shorter way to say that. Anyway, in the last episode, we found out the wonders of the dragon snails, trademarked. So next we're going to start with the variable coaster, and then the gender switcher, which maybe will give us some answers on Andrea Adams. We're probably never going to get any answers on Andrea Adams. Let's check out that, whoa. Okay. I thought the variable coaster was going to be some sort of drink coaster that does things to what you're drinking. I was not expecting a roller coaster, and now I'm scared. Okay. SCP-112 is contained within the abandoned blank amusement park. Let's assume Six Flags. It says boy. Or does it say Roy with an I? Anyway. Designated Site Blank. Site Blank is to be staffed with a standard complement of 12 armed guards dressed in designated amusatastic land garb to prevent civilian interference. If it's an abandoned blank, why would you just say what their garb says? It's not very... okay. 112's power supply is housed within a standard Foundation prefab building with 2 high security door locks and a standard staff of 6 security staff and 1 operator. Since all other rides in Site Blank are intentionally disabled, civilian intervention is low. As the anomalous properties of 112 occur regardless of its condition, only mandatory maintenance work is to be done on 112. This also ensures that local civilians treat 112 and its surroundings as abandoned and ignored. All tests involving 112 must be conducted with a portable toilet nearby, as well as a small table with basic food and drink items. Description: 112 is a steel sit-down roller coaster formerly known as the Blue Steel Surfer. Built in 19-something, 112 was marketed as the crown jewel of the blank amusement park. Initial testing of the ride resulted in extremely negative experiences from testing staff. When these reports became public knowledge, the financial repercussions of the failure of the Steel Surfer resulted in the parent company of the amusement park going bankrupt. Now, does negative experiences mean they didn't feel good, or does negative experiences mean they died? We'll never know. The property was abandoned and undisturbed until 19-something when a local gang broke to the park and reactivated the improperly disabled rides, 112 included. When police attempted to arrest the members who were exiting 112 after its inaugural ride, the riders began to redacted, attracting local media attention. For more information, see archive.112.blank. Suspecting the ride had traits within its mandate, the Foundation purchased the park under the auspices of rebuilding the park as Amusatastic Land in order to test any potential anomalous properties from the ride. When 112 is started, the ride functions as expected until Point Alpha, its primary drop. When a car reaches Point Alpha, the train vanishes. After 3 minutes, the estimated time the train would normally take, the train rematerializes at Point Omega, 3 meters from the coaster's starting point. Human subjects riding 112 have a drastically different experience compared to outside observation. The time frame between Point Alpha and Point Omega is massively extended, with subjective ride times ranging from 4 minutes to something months. The properties of the ride also vary from person to person. Most subjects report elements on the ride that do not exist on the ride proper, like bat wings, cobra rolls, and inclined loops. Subjects do not have any sense that the rest of the world is alien or otherwise different, only the ride experience is different. Upon exiting the ride, subjects typically experience feelings of confusion and ill health depending on the subjective time they spent riding 112. These feelings are not based on any physical maladies, but the subjective experience of dealing with a physical malady for an extended period of time. For example, a subject with a subjective ride time of 3 days may experience confusion that he had strong feelings of hunger for most of his ride, but at the end of the ride he was not hungry at all. Addendum: Assorted experiments. D34534 was sent on 112 at 2:42 in the afternoon. The train reached Alpha at 2:43, rematerialized at 2:46. Upon exiting, they quietly asked for aspirin before passing out. Upon revival and medication, they reported a subjective ride time of 36 minutes with multiple loops and twists not found on the ride. D67564 sent at 1:30, reached 1:31, came back 1:34. They reported a subjective ride time of 4 minutes, which they reported as enjoyable with the exception of the part where the car jumps off the track and lands right before the loop. Okay, D5893 was sent at 12:30, reached Alpha at 12:31, came back at 12:34. At the end, they immediately ran to the table with the consumables, wordlessly consuming everything he could grab onto, including their wrappers of previously consumed food objects. They became violent when the Foundation tried to subdue him, even goes so far as to expunged. Upon capture and interviewing, he remained confused and disoriented, continuously saying the phrases, "No food till the ride is over," "Let me sleep," "Let the spinning stop," and 152 lights. The Foundation believes that their statements imply his ride time was approximately 5 months long, and during his trip he experienced 5 months worth of malnutrition and exhaustion, despite no physical proof of these experiences found. Okay. D7556 was sent... Oh, they had a camera, too. They were sent at 11:36 a.m. It reached the Alpha at 11:37, came back at 11:40. They experienced symptoms similar but muted to those of the last one. During the interview, he explained that his subjective ride time was 1 month and 6 days long. During his trip, he was unable to eat or sleep and suffered major headaches from 112. They reported experiencing every sort of roller coaster element currently in use, and a few believed to be conceptual. Camera footage lasting 3 minutes shows D7556 sobbing for the duration of the ride, with movement consistent with the physical track. Addendum B: Rider interviews. Okay. Post-ride interview. How are you feeling? 35784. I'm fine. It was just a roller coaster ride, dude. Maybe you had me confused with the other guy, you know, the one that attacked when the ride was over. I will in time. Describe your experience on 112, please. What's there to say? Before I was sent to jail, I designed coasters. A couple minutes too long of a ride, you always gotta worry about that, but the twists that thing has are damn good. A few of them, I'm pretty sure I mocked up back in blank. It would have been a lot better if the tard next to me wasn't acting like a damn fool. D23512, what was he doing? It wasn't what he... It's what he wasn't doing that pissed me off. He was slouched over so much that his restraints went taut, just facing forward. I think his mouth was open the entire time. If it were possible, I'd say he looked like someone who had been on a crying jag for a few hours. I don't know. When we got that slow point before the banked curve, I tried snapping my fingers in front of him. Idiot just barely turned to face me. And you know what happened afterwards? Yes, he punched you. Not really a punch, really. Slapped me, shaking me, trying to choke me. I didn't get the impression that he really wanted to kill me, just wanted an answer out of me. That's what he said, actually. Shit like, "Why didn't you look at me?" and "Why did you not stop cheering the whole time?" in a very hoarse voice. Was in mid-question with another when the guards introduced their rifles to the back of his head. Okay. 23512. This interview was conducted 3 weeks after riding on 112 with 35784. They are not willing to speak. He is not willing to speak verbally since his ride. From time to time he attempts to speak, but shows sign of discomfort and pain in doing so, stating that his throat is too sore to talk. While there are no medical issues with him, his experiences have obviously left him traumatized from his experience on 112. Dr. Blank estimates that a full recovery is possible before monthly terminations, and that at such a time he will be capable of estimating precisely how long his subjective ride time was. This interview was conducted through written communication. Given his fixation on certain traits of the ride, this transcript has been edited for brevity. Hello, 23512. How are you feeling? Still hurts? Still dizzy? Loops and loops? Spins forever and ever. Why did you say your throat hurts? Screamed over and over. Girl wouldn't answer me. She never looked at me. I screamed and screamed till I couldn't scream anymore. Throat got better, screamed again. Never noticed, just kept cheering the hell of ups and downs and ups and side to side and side to side. I'm assuming you're talking about the person who went on the ride with you. 35784. Girl with yeah. Cheered and laughed and cheered and laughed. Every spin, every turn, every twist. Even when it got dark, I could hear her laughing and wooing. Couldn't sleep because of her laughing and cheering. Light and day, bright and dark, always screaming and giggling. How could she do that? She told me you were just sitting there, staring ahead. She said she tried to get your attention, but you never responded. I waved and shook her. She didn't move. She didn't notice. Just kept cheering. Tried to tune her out for a few months at a time, but she never noticed me. Kept cheering, kept screaming, kept laughing at me. As I starved and peed myself and slammed my head against the side till I bled, just kept laughing and screaming through the loops and the spins and the deep dark dips that never ended, never stopped crushing. 23-512, I'm trying to help you, but acting insane won't help you in the least. There was no injury to your head at the end of the ride. I was there, I felt it, the warm on my head till I got cold and stopped spilling, it still itches. So what happened at the end of the ride? You had a bit of an issue with 35784. She stopped laughing and giggling after all that time, and she looks at me and smiles and says, "Nice ride, eh?" And I shook her and tried to ask her why she wouldn't stop smiling and screaming. I didn't want to hurt her, not really. Just wanted to know why. Repeats blank times until disabled. So I didn't realize that the last person was a lady. There didn't seem to be any indication that it was a lady. But yeah, that happened. Okay, so now it's time for the gender switcher. I thought I was going to make it through this episode without grievous cursing, but I was wrong. Okay, so the gender switcher is safe, I guess. 113 is to be kept in standard storage in Site 23. 113 may be handled with laboratory gloves. No organism may be exposed to 113 without prior approval. Personnel exposed to 113 are to be kept under medical observation for 7 days. Description: 113 resembles a small polished piece of red jasper. Analysis shows that 113 is not composed of jasper, but redacted composition similar to that of other recovered objects. When 113 comes in direct contact with the flesh of an organism possessing sex chromosomes, the organism's physical characteristics associated with gender and biological sex are transformed, including genetics and secondary sexual characteristic, either reversed or altered. This process occurs in 4 stages. Stage 1 lasts about 0.2 seconds. 113 bonds with the cells it touches and induces an unidentified chemical change. This process causes tissue damage similar to mild burns, and 113 cannot be removed from contact with the subject until all stages complete. Stage 2 lasts approximately 20 seconds. 113 emits a low-intensity electromagnetic wave which travels through the subject's body. Subjects may experience nausea and vomiting along with a stinging sensation throughout the body. Stage 3 lasts approximately 60 seconds. Throughout this stage, the subject's cellular makeup is temporarily transformed. Altered cell composition ranges widely from being unidentifiable as human to a unique variation of partially differentiated stem cells. The subject will experience intense stimulation of all sensory nerves during the final 20 seconds of this stage, and describe this part of the process as extremely painful. Subjects in poor health may die of shock in this stage. At the end of this stage, the subject's biological sex is permanently altered. In standard cases, the subject's biological sex will be changed to the opposite biological sex. All primary and secondary sexual characteristics are altered accordingly. Stage 4. 113 disengages from the subject and becomes inert. Subjects with sex chromosomes atypical for their species, such as intersex humans, are affected in unpredictable ways by 113. In human intersex subjects, this appears to be influenced by gender identity. Such subjects may be unaffected, or their bodies may change to match baseline male or female bodies with sex chromosomes to match, or other results may occur. Usually, change seems to match or partially match subjects' gender identity during initial use, if gender identity is non-standard. Whether 113 alters its effect based on the presence of a non-standard gender identity is under investigation. Gender identity of human subjects is not typically altered by 113. In subjects with non-standard gender identities, typically gender identities which do not match their pre-exposure biological sex, this usually results in positive psychological effects. In subjects with standard gender identities, male to female, matching pre-exposure biological sex, psychological effects are usually negative. These appear to be natural psychological reactions and not an anomalous effect of 113. 113 exposure results in unusual effects in certain species. In the Komodo dragon, a number of ZWZZ individuals were transformed to possess WW chromosomes instead of ZZ or ZW, which was in every instance fatal. In a nematode, no males were produced despite C. elegans having 2 sexes, hermaphrodite and male. Male subjects became hermaphrodites, and hermaphrodite subjects were unaffected. Note, in wild populations, male C. elegans are extremely rare. Subjects of single-sex hermaphroditic species, such as earthworms, will not be transformed by 113. The object's process will stop at the second stage and the object will become inert. Previously exposed subjects may undergo 113's effects again by reinitiating contact with 113 after approximately 60 seconds have passed. However, in 25% of cases, immediate second exposure to 113 fails to transform the subject correctly. Transformation failure varies in nature, but usually includes massive bone, organ, and tissue damage to the subject, as well as partial or complete obliteration of genitalia. This commonly results in death by organ trauma or internal bleeding. Failure rate can be affected by subjects not coming into contact with 113 for a lengthy period of time, which varies by subject. Patterns are under research. Under normal circumstances, transformation failure rate increases exponentially upon multiple exposures. Subjects who survive rapid, repeated exposure are eventually transformed, data expunged. Further anomalous elements continue to appear as exposure count increases. Okay, so they turn into something else. Now for the Bringer of Conflict, which does not hardly sound like it could possibly be any manner of safe whatsoever. There we go, Euclid. 114 is to be kept in a 10 meters squared standard concrete humanoid containment cell at Site 17. The cell is positioned at the bottom of a 40-meter shaft to prevent staff members from coming into proximity of 114. The cell is accessible by a staircase restricted to emergency use only. Daily rations are provided to 114 3 times a day by means of a dumbwaiter. 114 is also permitted to submit written requests to attending staff by the same means. To date, it has been granted 1 Quran Arabic, 1 prayer rug, and 1 blank journal with pens. Research on 114 is suspended till further notice. Elimination of 114 is acceptable in the event of multiple containment breach crisis. 114 is a Pashtun woman of Afghani origin, approximately 40 years old and 160 centimeters tall. 114 has the involuntary effect of fostering and escalating violent conflict between all individuals in her proximity. Subjects within 10 to 15 meters of 114 become inconsolably aggressive at trivialities or points of little consequence, often to the degree of projecting hostile motives on others. Arguments generally arise between individuals after 1 to 3 minutes of exposure to 114. The resulting arguments turn to violence in all cases. Notably, persons affected by the presence of 114 will never exhibit hostility towards 114 or attempt to inflict harm upon her. Subjects ordered to deliberately injure 114 find themselves unable to do so. For relevant information, see Experiment Log 114. We're not going to do that. Communication with 114 has only been possible through written notes or electronic means. Researchers have gleaned that 114 is unaware of her effect on other people. She shows little to no response to exposure to violence and seems to be under the impression that human beings are naturally aggressively hostile to each other. 114 is consistently unresponsive and uncooperative with researchers and appears to be acutely wary of human interaction. Due to this difficulty of communication with 114, psychological evaluations have been speculative at best. Rudimentary assessments strongly suggest psychological trauma. Combat stress reaction and/or compassion fatigue have been tentatively proposed. Document 114A89812. Abridged eyewitnesses report from blank blank, a former soldier in the 40th Red Army, interviewed March 23, 1991, translated and transcribed by blank. We took blank on February the 1st, 1980. It was a shit little village, but this put up a damn good fight. 8 of our men killed, 15 wounded. One tank destroyed. It was dead cold too. You think the Middle East is warm, but you go to the mountains in February, it is not so. Anyway, we were mopping up the area, going through the huts, looking for weapon caches and the like. It seemed like every doorstep had some old babushka weeping and tearing at her hair and clutching our knees. But at the end of the street there was this one big hut, no babushka inside. Only there were trays of food left out, like an offering before the door. Blake pauses for several seconds. So, 6 of us go in to search. It was big and empty inside, dusty and practically bare. Didn't look like anyone had been in there a long time, but soon we hear this soft whimpering, though, and look! Over in the corner is a little girl, must be 8 or 9, curled up and all alone. Pyotr, he was a big softy. He goes over, he bends down, puts out his hand, says, "Come on, little one, it is okay, we won't hurt you." But the girl won't budge. Then Pyotr stands up all stiffly and looks back at us funny. Constantine walks over and puts a hand on his shoulder, tells him to leave the girl alone, laughing good-naturedly. Pyotr gets all red-faced like he's had a full bottle and shouts, "Get your damn hand off my shoulder," or something of the sort. Looks like a wild animal. We're all in surprise, and then suddenly they're on the ground and he's bashing Constantine's face in with the butt of his rifle, screaming. It took 3 of us to pull him off, and by then Constantine was dead. Okay, so that sucks. What's next? Not the brittle boy. First, the miniature dump truck. Which sounds safe? Okay. Oh, look at it. SCP-115-1 is to be stored in a secure vehicle storage facility in Site Blank, where access is restricted unless accompanied by a level 3 personnel or higher. 115-2 is currently being kept in a secure drawer of Dr. Blank's desk. It is not to be used without Dr. Blank's explicit approval. Any site staff using 115-2 must return it in a timely manner or face punitive measures. No other special containment procedures are required. 115-1 is a toy dump truck with no identifying markers or labels to identify its original manufacturer. However, unlike regular toy dump trucks, 115-1 weighs as much as the actual vehicle it represents, roughly 90 tons. Oh. It is currently unknown how the vehicle weighs this much, as analysis of 115-1's composition reveals that it is made of the same commercial plastic commonly found in similar cheap quality toys. Sounds like it's made of dark matter though. Anyway, 115-1 is also capable of motorized movement and can function exactly like a normal dump truck, except in the fact that it is several magnitudes smaller. It is controlled by 115-2, which resembles a heavily modified RC car. Wait a minute. Okay, 115-2 is in his desk. I thought, okay. 115-2 can control 115's movements, despite the fact that 115-1 lacks any kind of radio receiver or mechanical parts. 115-2 does not work with any other radio-controlled device, but otherwise functions exactly like a mundane radio controller, even requiring batteries to function properly. Testing has shown that in addition to its abnormal weight, 115-1 also has a similar carrying capacity as its larger counterparts, being able to carry or tow roughly 120 tons of cargo. In addition, 115-1 also apparently needs diesel fuel to run properly. There is a small port on its left side that allows fueling, though it stores and consumes as much fuel as a regular dump truck. How it consumes the diesel fuel, as well as where it's stored, are issues currently under study. 115-1 was originally found at a construction site in Blank, where workers attempted to move it, but found the task impossible due to the fact that it weighs 90 tons. They were forced to use heavy machinery to finally move it off the construction site to a nearby town, where it became a local curiosity. Agents Blank and Blank discovered 115-1 and found 115-2 at the same construction site. Class A amnesiacs were distributed among the town people in order to cover up 115-1's existence. To anybody using 115-1 for testing, I would like to remind you about Newton's laws. Driving 115-1 recklessly at high speeds is inviting disaster, and we've already had to deal with several destroyed walls and equipment due to improper handling. Dr. Somebody. Okay, so next up is the Brittle Boy, which does not sound any kind of safe at all. Nope, he is Euclid. They, Brittle Boy. 116 is kept in a 16 by 16 meter cell constructed of Kevlar with a 1 meter porous rubber padding on all surfaces. No personnel are to enter the cell without proper briefing and threat reduction measures. See Appendix 3, which is down there somewhere, I'm sure. Cell is to be monitored at all times by 6 agents, 4 stationed at corner points of the cell, and 2 stationed with 116. No pointed objects or intrusive testing equipment of any kind are to be placed in the possession of the agents within the cell. Outside monitoring is achieved using a VBSO5 class concealed button cameras stationed at high corners of the cell. Outside monitoring is to be carried out by further 2 agents. If suspicious activity begins, initialize Achilles procedure that. Delta? I don't know what that symbol is. All monitoring agents, internal or external, are to undergo bi-monthly IQ tests, as well as standard weekly psychiatric analysis. Significant drops in the IQ of agents, about 5 points, is to be regarded as prolonged exposure and to be treated as outlined in standard quarantine instructions. I feel like I may be misunderstanding this thing's usage of the word brittle. 116 has the outward appearance of a Caucasian male around 9 years of age. Skin is cauterized and scarred over 98% of body, limbs, and head. The bone structure is drastically different from the standard Homo sapiens bone layout, and all bones are dangerously brittle, okay. The most distinguishable difference between the human body and that of 116 is the non-existence of joints in the latter. 116 is entirely capable of independent movement, but to do so would cause multiple shattering breaks to all bones affected by said movement. To combat this, 116 shows remarkable self-healing, and over a period of minutes can completely regenerate its rigid bone placement. 116 has shown some language skill since acquisition. However, the only language it speaks is a disrupted and broken version of English in which every word has been replaced with an almost entirely unconnected one. Prolonged attempts to make sense of 116's speech have resulted in some long-term mental degradation in researchers. There seems to be no pattern to the word replacement and attempts to continue to translate it. Research suggests that 116 may be capable of low-level telepathy, which deteriorates the victim's brain functions over a long period of time. Okay. Sergeant Blank Blank, Memorandum, May 29th blank. Development of suicidal tendencies by 116. 116 has begun to show extreme suicidal tendencies. Request modification of monitoring and containment protocol to avoid undue damage to the subject. Appendix 2. June 19-something. 116, the unique linguistics setup is one of increasing interest to me. Continuing research by my team and me has yielded these somewhat basic results. Attached file. 116 linguistics _ AA0.001.doc. No clear reasoning has been found as to why 116 communicates in this way. Although the words spoken by it are English, the parameters under which they operate are drastically different. No attempt has yet been made to produce written language from SCP-116 due to bone structure anomalies. Even speaking can be an extreme challenge for 116 despite its experienced dulled pain receptors. I have taken a special interest in this subject, as the way in which it reacts to normal English is remarkable. It is obvious that what we say to it sounds just as garbled to it as what it says back to us does to us, if that makes any sense at all. In all my years at Site-19, I have never seen anything quite like it linguistically. If it's linguistic, you're not seeing it. I will continue to study to record what I find. Lieutenant Somebody. Memorandum, June 30th. Subject, procedure of and relating to worrying new suicidal tendencies shown by 116. No solid equipment weighing more than 8 pounds can be taken into the cell. All interior guards are to have their canine teeth filed until blunted completely. Nah. Security level is to be raised to RT5. Full body cavity search and X-ray before entrance is to be granted. If any asphyxiation or hypoxia appears to be affecting 116 emergency, CPR is to be administered by internal guards. Suggestion noted that 116 should be connected to a life support machine even when not in danger of death to prevent unintentional termination. Sergeant Blank Blank, Memorandum, July 11th. Cessation of research regarding 116. Any and all research regarding 116 is to be immediately halted until further notice. Dr. Blank, the primary researcher into 116's language and delayed telepathy, is to be removed from this site and kept in solitary confinement until all symptoms of his dementia and schizophrenia have dissipated. All personnel involved with 116 are to be quarantined until further notice. Full bone marrow transplants are to be performed on all agents who have been in tactile contact with 116. Suggested termination of interior guard protocol noted. Colonel Somebody, cessation of 116 project. Memorandum, March 20-something. Given that suicidal tendencies of 116 is deleterious effects on individual, involved personnel, and lack of significant useful progress in research, I propose we allow 116 to self-terminate in a controlled environment. This thing has so far proven to be a fruitless waste of resources. Perhaps post-mortem examination will provide us with answers we haven't been able to obtain thus far. Okay. Now the complete multi-tool. Safe? Okay, yeah, safe. 117 is to be kept in the small leather pouch it was found in unless in use or in current study. Any personnel deemed mentally fit may enter the containment cell of the SCP, though if they are suspected to be trying to remove the SCP without permission, they are to be searched, and if that is the case, they are to be reprimanded. At least not terminated. They could have just said shoot them. The door to the containment cell should remain locked, and a guard posted only when the object is in use. Description. The item appears to be a regular multi-tool of unknown make and brand found in some place in Florida. What's left of it. At first glance, only the normal tools are found: screwdriver, knife, can opener, etc. But if the user is faced with a task, regardless of what tool the subject intends to pull out and use, a tool perfectly fitted for the job will take its place, regardless of spatial quantities that are being broken by the tool. All other tools always seem to be present, though, after the task is completed and the tool closed, unless faced with a task requiring that tool again, the tool cannot be found on the tool again. I think I just used the word tool more times than I have this year. Those with level 2 security clearance should see document 117B, which is right there. Effects of usage. After countless uses and testing with the SCP, it has been discovered to cause harm, and possibly death, to the user by means of absorbing iron, copper, calcium, and zinc from the user's body as long as the user is touching the device. Gloves seem to have no curbing effect on this, and the rate of absorption seems to depend on the tools used / created by 117. It is advised that only Class D personnel are used in conjunction with this SCP to prevent death and injury of researchers. That That sounds significantly less safe, but again, I had safe described to me as it was safe to get, not necessarily safe to be around. But still, I wonder how many people had to die before they found out that its tools were being created from the metals in the blood of the human body. Anyway, okay, read that already. 117B, usage log of 117. Situation, tool produced by SCP. Loose screw in a metal plate, screwdriver, though not standard. A nail barely in timber, hammer. Piece of timber with proposed cut lines drawn. Electric saw, which needed no outside power source. A piece of bulletproof glass. Unknown laser cutting tool, which needed no outside power source. SCP blank. A bloodied combat knife. Agent with a broken bone. A small item with a trigger, which when pulled emitted an odd radiation, instantly healing the injury. Class D personnel fit for execution. Data expunged. Communication needed with 363. Data expunged. A non-shuffled deck of playing cards. A mid-sized mechanical shuffler. Terminal cancer. Healed it. Perfectly healthy human male with no criminal record. Data expunged. Perfectly healthy Hispanic human male with no criminal record. Data expunged. Silver diner fork in perfect condition. No tools could be found on the SCP. Data expunged. A screwdriver. A dirty window. A nozzle that sprayed a mixture of soap and water that completely cleaned the window. An uncharged iPod. The iPod end of the charging cord which needed no outside power source. A blank sheet of standard computer paper. A pen filled with a seemingly infinite supply of black ink. A Samsung cell phone. A small device that when attached to the phone increased signal strength by approximately 250%. Dang. Document 117G. Developments concerning 117. After exposing the SCP to an array of different items and people, it appears that the object may very well be sentient to some degree. Because of this, we must consider the fact that the SCP is susceptible to telepathy and must not come into contact with any SCPs with known telepathic powers. Dr. Kleiman. The above is a transcript of the personal notes of Dr. Kleiman, who seems to have taken a harmless interest in the object. Testing with other SCPs is suspended as of 9/16 blank. Note. Testing is suggested for SCP-882 and under consideration by Dr. Kleiman. 6/19/2000 something. Further biological testing is halted by Dr. Kleiman after incident this. The SCP is still fit to be used for any repairs around the facilities as long as the SCP is followed by one or more armed guards to brief till proper use of the SCP. After much consideration, I must deny testing of 117 with 882. The risk of damaging 882 is simply too great to overlook. Dr. Kleiman. After Incident 117-3F, I'm forced to put a stop to all testing of 117 in conjunction with other SCPs. The risk of a total loss of containment is far too great. All biological testing is to be halted until a later date, as the results so far have proved varying, and there is a limit of Class D staff available for my research. Dr. Kleiman. Biological testing resumed by Dr. Kleiman with mixed results. Testing of 117 with other SCPs under reconsideration by 05 somebody, though it seems unlikely further testing will occur. March 20th this year something. Testing suggested for 682. We'll never know how that went. Maybe we will. Okay, so next up is nuclear protists. I think I need to Google what a protist is because I don't know what that is. Protist. A diverse collection of organisms. While exceptions exist, they are primarily microscopic and unicellular, or made up of a single cell. The cells of protists are highly organized with a nucleus and specialized cellular machinery called organelles. Okay, so, it's a nuclear cell of some kind, and from this picture, something went bad. Due to the number and distribution of 118, containment of every specimen is impossible. Known 118 red zones are to be closed off to all civilian marine vessels and divers under the guise of a military presence or other plausible cover story. Contacts and navies... Sorry, I yawned. Contacts and navies known to operate near 118 red zones are to be utilized in order to minimize the passage of military vessels through the red zones. If any area within the red zone has a depth of less than 1,500 meters, the restriction is to be applied to aircraft as well. All human activity in surrounding yellow zones is to be monitored, and any non-military vessels or individuals approaching the red zone are to be turned away. In the red and yellow zones, Protocol Toxic Harvest is to be followed to ensure the removal of devices generated by 118. Furthermore, Protocol Cell Watch is to be followed to ensure the early detection of any emerging red zones. Samples of 118 can be stored using standard containment procedures for non-virulent anomalous microbes. So, 118 is a species of ocean-dwelling protista that is capable of assembling functional, self-initiating nuclear devices from materials present in ocean water. While 118 is unknown and hence has not been classified by the scientific community, specimens resemble protists of the phylum that, but have significantly increased levels of movement speed, nutrient storage capability, and resistance to alpha radiation. Specimens of 118 have been found in all the world's oceans and seas. So, just to recap, it sounds like what 118 is some form of species of cell that builds nuclear weapons just because it can. Anyway, when in a survivable saltwater environment, specimens of 118 will seek out materials including, but not limited to, iron, silver, copper, carbon, TNT, and uranium isotopes. How many uranium isotopes are in saltwater? When 118 has located a material of interest, the material is absorbed into the cell using a method dependent on the size of the material. Single atoms and molecules, mostly substances that are dissolved in the water, are passed through the cellular membrane through specialized protein pumps. Larger particles, smaller than the cell itself, are ingested through phagocytosis. Larger pieces will have particles turned off through an unknown mechanism, which are then absorbed using the first two methods. This mining occurs even in a solid and hard substances, such as metal ingots. I don't know why I'm yawning so much, I'm sorry. Upon reaching a threshold of absorbed material, specimens of 118 will move towards an assembly area on the bottom of the body of the water they are present in and will contribute to the assembly of a nuclear device. The nuclear devices assembled are gun-type fission devices using uranium-235 as their fissile material. Observation of devices in the process of being assembled show that the process starts with the assembly of a metallic rounded cylindrical casing for the device, followed by the creation of two subcritical masses of uranium and the conventional explosives to propel them into each other. The mechanism by which 118 enriches harvested uranium is currently unknown, see Addendum 4. The device is then finished with the assembly of a uranium-238 tamper, where the two uranium masses will collide in the assembly of a trigger mechanism. 118 appears to assemble the necessary components by adding minuscule amounts of material to an initially tiny material seed. Differing atoms and molecules can be added to the same component, and assembled components are not necessarily homogeneous. It is currently unknown whether 118 builds on the seed atom or by adding very small sub-micrometer fragments. The mechanism by which 118 attaches new material to the seed seamlessly is unknown. The assembly time depends on the size of the device being assembled, water conditions, and mineral availability, but observations suggest that 300 days for a medium-sized device can be considered average. Once a nuclear device is finished, 118 will detonate the device by completing a circuit in the trigger mechanism. Around 90% of the nuclear explosions recorded as a result of 118 have had yields in the 20 to 35 kiloton range, although yields as low as 4 kilotons and up to blank kilotons have been reported. Aside from cases involving human interference, failure to detonate has never been observed, as all nuclear devices recorded have either been detonated of their own accord or removed from the water prior to completion. Devices constructed by 118 appear to be larger than man-made devices of similar design and yield, presumably due to the neutron moderating effect of the water that separates the uranium masses throughout much of the device's construction. A given assembly area typically has between 1 and 3 devices in the process of assembly at any given time, although as many as 6 at a time has been observed. In zones where multiple devices are simultaneously assembled, the devices are separated by enough distance to prevent the detonation of one from destroying or setting off the others. While the Foundation is unable to prevent civilians or other organizations from obtaining samples of 118, its superficial similarity to existing species, few numbers relative to all oceanic protista, lack of anomalous behavior outside of material-rich bodies of water, and the Foundation's standard monitoring of scientific studies at risk of uncovering information about anomalous biological species ensures that the chance of 118's true nature being determined through samples is minimal. There are currently 6 different active 118 assembly areas known to the Foundation. While the natural disappearance of an assembly area has been observed, the current consensus among researchers assigned to 118 is that the elimination of assembly areas without massively noticeable effects is currently unfeasible. See Experiment Log 118 Gamma for details. Thus, containment is to be established at SCP-118's assembly areas to be designated red zones and surrounding yellow zones. Furthermore, areas with elevated concentrations of 118 zones of interest are to be monitored for signs of assembly areas. Okay. Following the USS Blank incident, the exclusion radius used when drawing red zones has been increased. Containment Protocol Toxic Harvest has been updated. With the signing of the Partial Test Ban Treaty and growing number and capability of nuclear detonation detection methods in use, the consequence of nuclear detonations caused by 118 have increased. Containment protocols have been revised in light of these facts. Due to the significant cost of containing SCP-118 red zones, the O5 Council has requested trials on possible methods to eliminate the assembly areas. And here's that experiment log, which is really long and not necessarily important. Our research has determined that 118 enriches uranium by exploiting the fact that U-235 has a slightly greater preference for a high oxidation state than U-238. 118 specimens which have harvested large amounts of uranium and are near assembly areas appear to develop specialized organelles resembling a series of thousands of vacuole-like chambers with a mitochondria-like organelles within them, responsible for catalyzing reduction and oxidation reactions. In a given chamber, uranium is repeatedly reduced and oxidized. Compounds with uranium in higher oxidation states are transferred up the chain of chambers, while compounds with lower oxidation states are transferred down the chain. This results in a small amount of highly enriched uranium at the very end of the chain. Researchers and engineers at Research Sector Blank have managed to create a prototype uranium enrichment device based on the principles employed by 118. While the prototype was unable to produce weapons-grade uranium without using unreasonable amounts of time, it was successful in producing reactor-grade uranium, albeit at a significantly greater cost than conventional methods. Despite its current limitations, the idea shows promise, and I have forwarded our findings to the relevant front companies, Dr. Blank. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop this episode here. In the next one, we're going to do the Time Crow Wave and some other ones. Just see how many I can get before I hit 40 minutes. So, this has been Inachi Sasuke. This was Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki, episode 37. And I will see y'all in the next one. Later.